Elon Musk and Mark Zuckerberg are having a cage fight. But is their real battle going to be against the EU, who are introducing new censorship laws that threaten to bring down free speech altogether? Hello there, you 6.4 million awakening wonders. Thanks for joining me on this voyage to truth and freedom at a time where we oppose serious forces which, in my opinion, have observed the trend that independent media can provide voices to people that oppose centralist authoritarian narratives and are beginning to shut it down. Even Elon Musk has capitulated to EU laws to censor Twitter. Let's have a look at Elon Musk and Mark Zuckerberg's fight being spoken about by the mainstream news as if it's a real fight between actual fighters, which is weird. What kind of circus world is this? What kind of hysterical clown spectacle are we living in when this is seriously discussed? I'll tell you what kind of world we're living in. One where they want to distract you from the fact that vast, giant, unelected bureaucratic bodies are imposing power like racketeers and gangsters in a way that is completely unprecedented, I believe, because they recognise that independent media and independent politics is on the rise and could capsize the establishment.
A tech billionaire cage match could become reality. Can you imagine that? Elon Musk, Mark Zuckerberg in the cage, and they say they're absolutely serious about trading blows in the octagon.
It's funny that they're absolutely serious about it, because when they recognise what the EU and the Five Eyes countries are going to do with these new censorship laws, they're going to have different concerns. It's interesting that during the pandemic, Fauci was exchanging letters with Zuckerberg. Zuckerberg was saying, I'm available to help you. But now Zuckerberg has, on Lex Fridman's podcast, said they went too far. They censored stuff that they shouldn't have done.
Asked for a bunch of things to be censored that in retrospect ended up being more debatable or true.
It's amazing that Elon Musk has acquired Twitter and seems committed to free speech. But similarly astonishing is the fact that the EU have been able to get him to agree to this legislation. If the world's richest man cannot oppose these forces, who can? The answer to that rhetorical question is only all of us. Only all of us.
It all started with a tweet. We all thought Musk and Zuck were joking about it on social media, but this week Zuckerberg posted on his Instagram story, "Send me location."
Send me location.
So there you go. An extraordinary thing to ponder. At this age where we're fascinated again by the Titanic, billionaires threaten to brawl. Surely this is a ridiculous spectacle. And surely this has to be considered in the context where giant bureaucratic bodies are looking to impose never-before-seen measures to regulate and control speech. Now, the simple question we have to ask, and let me know in the comments if you agree with this while you simultaneously subscribe, if you don't mind. Let me know this. Do you think that there are any giant legislative bodies that have the moral authority to regulate your life, to regulate your free speech? Who is it that you trust? What government? What NGO? Who do you trust? Do you trust the IMF, the WHO, the World Bank, the WEF, the American government, the Republican Party, the Democrat Party, the British government, the EU, Macron, Trudeau? Who? Who do you trust? Who would you vote for? Who do you want censoring you? Twitter CEO Linda Yaccarino, along with owner Elon Musk, met with the EU on Wednesday. At the top of the agenda for the EU was ensuring that Twitter is going to comply with its upcoming censorship law, which is scheduled to be enforced on August the 25th, 2023. Not far off, coming up soon. Enforced. The censorship law is entitled the Digital Services Act. It's just the Digital Services Act. The EU has been pushing for Twitter to commit to complying with it. Ever since he took over Twitter, Elon Musk has been under fire from various political and media corners. That's right, because, you know, they care about you so much that they're attacking anyone that's talking about free speech. Remember, I don't have unmitigated, unregulated, unbounded faith in any individual, actually, because I'm an adult. But broadly speaking, I think that Elon Musk has been a positive influence in the world of free speech, discourse and debate. He's not censoring either side of any conversation. And God, in the end, I think that's where we have to get to. Let me know in the comments if you agree. Now, Musk appears to be appeasing the Brussels bureaucrats by promising that his social media company will respect EU laws designed to fight disinformation and hate speech, saying if laws are passed, Twitter will obey the law. And I suppose in a sense that's bloody obvious, isn't it? Because what's the alternative? Twitter will break the law. But the problem is, of course, that hate speech and disinformation are terms that are used to censor. Who in the world, in their right mind, other than a few lunatics think that hate speech is a good thing. What? Hate speech? I like speaking hate to people. I want to malign vulnerable people. I want to speak hatefully about people that are different from me in some way. The number of people that are doing that, I know that there are people doing that, but they are not as significant, I would contest, as the ability of astonishingly powerful bureaucratic agencies who want to censor and control counter-narratives that, in my view, are designed to democratize increasingly authoritarian spaces. Are you beginning to understand that your alliances with people who are culturally different than you, that the cultural differences are, whilst they are important to you, and this is my point, in fact, I welcome how important they are to you, if you are not willing to form alliances with and stop criticizing people that live differently from you, these giant bureaucratic bodies are just going to steamroll through your freedom while you're going, I agree with this part of it, they're legislating in my favor, woohoo! And disinformation, of course, is an arbitrary term. It just means information that we don't like. Just look at the last few years. Information that was regarded as disinformation a few years ago proved to be information. Where's the apology? Where's the reversal? Where's the compensation? Instead of any of those things, we're going to pass massive disinformation laws. This comes after France's digital minister, Jean-Noel Barrot, threatened the social media platforms' access to the bloc. Disinformation is one of the gravest threats weighing on our democracies, said Barrot. Our democracies is not democratic, is it? It's not democratic if you can't, using the ballot and the electoral mechanisms, alter the trajectory and machinations of power. Twitter, if it repeatedly doesn't follow our rules, will be banned from the EU, the French minister added. So Twitter could face being cut out of, that's probably what, a fifth of the planet's population, significant and advanced economies just due to the way that society and civilization rolled out. So obviously Twitter can't afford to do that. So the point I'm making here is not, oh, Elon Musk, he's a coward. It's no one can oppose force of that magnitude. It's irresistible bureaucratic power. In May, the European Union's Internal Markets Commissioner, Thierry Breton, warned that the platform cannot hide from obligations to censor content. You can run, but you can't hide, Breton threatened in a tweet. When did we get to the point where, bureaucrats from the EU started saying, you can run, but you can't hide? This is just someone in the office at the EU. You pull a knife, we'll pull a gun.
Brings a knife to a gunfight.
You send one of ours to the hospital, we'll send one of yours to the morgue. Hashtag, that's the EU way. They're not gangsters, but they actually are, though, aren't they? They actually are. Their rhetoric is starting to be laced with the true violence that is always just out of view when power is asserted. Beyond voluntary commitments, fighting disinformation will be a legal obligation under DSA as of August the 25th, Breton continued. Our teams will be ready for enforcement. What a terrifying statement. Our teams will be ready for enforcement. You will comply.
You have 20 seconds to comply.
I don't know. I don't want to be hysterical, as we say in my line. If it's hysterical, it's historical, i.e. if something makes you go crazy, it's probably triggered something from your past. But our teams will be ready for enforcement, and words like beyond voluntary commitments, fighting disinformation will be a legal obligation. That's saying you are going to do what you're told. No wonder the cage fighting stuff's coming into the public conversation, because we're getting to basic animal freedom, the freedom of your body. How are you going to make me? We're going to make you with force. Is that how people talk when they're trying to protect you? We are going to protect the public from threatening hate speech. Oh yeah? And how are you going to do that? By threatening hate speech? Let's have a look at Breton, a man who talks a good fight. Let's see what he looks like.
My mission is just to make sure that as of August 25th, they will.
Don't like the old desk slam much. They will.
They will respect the law, or they will not be able to continue to operate in Europe. And they all want to operate in Europe.
Where's this power coming from? They're barely visible, unremarkable bureaucrats saying stuff like, you can run, but you can't hide. That's where power is. That's power, to say you won't be able to operate in Europe. Let me know in the comments what you think. Breton was referring to the censorship law, the controversial Digital Services Act, a new set of rules for social media platforms operating in Europe, which require them to actively police content or risk fines of up to 6% of global turnover. No one's going to be prepared to risk that. No one, because when you think think of like a Twitter or Alphabet or Meta or Facebook or those companies, 6% of a turnover is meaningful. They won't be able to do that because of their shareholders. It's a rigged game. People have looked at the way things are going. Wait a minute, Brexit, Donald Trump, RFK, 5 years, 10 years, carry the one. Oh no, there's going to be independent media voices, independent political voices. We have to shut this stuff down. They won't be able to do it if we control the social media platforms. We already control mainstream media. Let's exert that kind of control over social media. Otherwise, there's a genuine threat that you'll get political movements that are opposed to this kind of bureaucratic, economic and state power, and where those three things intermingle and coalesce. They'll be able to attack that, but they won't be able to do that if we hit them where it hurts. This is what these measures are about. Do you seriously believe it's about protecting you? It is a mad, crazy idea. Oh, we're going to propose this thing. What do you think? Would you like to vote for it? Vote yes if you would like it. Vote no. No, don't ask them to vote for stuff. They vote for people we don't like. They vote for stuff we don't want. That's the litmus test. Are they asking you or are they telling you? The current code of practice, which is voluntary, includes obligations for social media to stop the monetization of disinformation, monitor political advertising, and allow third parties to access their algorithms. Access their algorithms means manage which information is promoted and manage which information disappears. So, shadow banning and the ability to control the flow of free information. End of freedom of speech. Wow. So you have to make free speech sound like a bad thing. When I'm talking about free speech, I'm not going, hey, free speech, I want to be able to abuse people that are different colours or genders or whatever. I'm like, no. If we can't speak freely, we're not going to be able to attack power. What do you think power cares about? Vulnerable people or powerful people? Tell me in the comments. In February, Twitter did not submit a report on its implementation of the code. It was the only major platform to fail to do so. Props. Unlike the code of practice, the DSA is legally binding, and large platforms, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, Pinterest, Snapchat and LinkedIn will have to comply if they want to operate in Europe. In April, the Digital Services Act just got enriched by a new law that will allow the bloc to declare a state of emergency on the internet. Oh, like those truckers.
Small fringe minority holding unacceptable views.
So if you don't agree with the state, you're like, oh, we'll protest. Oh, I'm afraid it's an emergency. Comply. And this is bureaucratic power at the level of the state that's bypassing democracy, now interconnecting with big tech power, which, as you know, is moving towards surveillance and social credit scoring. It's just a matter of time so they could just fade down your economic in a bit. You are a non-person. You've got no money. You can't vote. You can't travel. Do you not see this is where this is heading? Do you genuinely think they care about rainbows and stuff? Hey, come on, help the keyword. Well, hold on a minute. Remember we cared about nurses last week? Did we care about the nurses this week? No, we're firing them all. Remember you cared about key workers and lorry drivers and no, we don't care about truck drivers anymore. Oh, wow, it's almost like you've got no principles other than the principle to maintain power and to control information. Oh, I'm sorry, it looks like that. You can't run and you can't hide and you must comply. A state of emergency normally gives governments extraordinary powers and suspends normal laws and regulation in order to preserve lives and property, something that has thus far been used in case of war or natural disaster, i.e. those events affecting a country's physical security, economy, etc. But now the 27 EU countries will be able to do the same in imposing extraordinary control on all key public-facing elements of the web, social platforms, search engines and e-commerce sites. What they're doing are taking measures that they trialled during the pandemic and applying it to the internet. They're mapping the concept of emergency onto management of information. Many people said, hey, what if this pandemic and the subsequent measures are a kind of trial run? Well, yes, it looks like it was. And in ways that are sort of difficult to preempt, actually, because they're applying it to a sort of cyber realm now. But it's plainly about control. I'm a person that's always in the past believed that the function of the state was to protect the people, potentially from commercial and corporate interests becoming too gargantuan and out of control, as well as obviously protecting us, the people, from foreign invasions, war and stuff. But now I think that the state does not do that and cannot do that and will not do that. And I don't think of myself as like, well, it should be all private economies and free market. I don't think that, because I think that's out of control and mental and greedy. But this stuff, this is the beginning of the end right here in legislative form. Daphne Keller of Stanford Stanford Cyber Policy Center has been quoted as telling Wired, "It looks like the war in Ukraine created a political opportunity for advocates of tighter restrictions to push their agenda. That's pretty normal politics, if bad law." People have always said what happens is there's a crisis, then the crisis is used to present a solution, then the solution permits legislation or regulation, which then enhances the power of centralized authority. They're right. That's happening whether it's a pandemic or this war. They're being used to usher in new legislation and regulation that normalizes control. It's of interest to note that big tech has been playing along pretty well so far, making this latest legislative push somewhat unclear. Both during the COVID and Ukraine war events, these large corporations have been heeding political messages and catering to political needs basically to a fault. Reports suggest now that the bureaucrats in Brussels may just want to make their job simpler. Instead of having to go to the sanctions regime and relying on big tech to obey, like they did when they blocked Russian media outlets like RT and Sputnik, they will now have a whole new law that enforces all this in one fell swoop. So instead of politely asking that RT be shut down, which Rumble refused to do, and they are now banned in France as a consequence, you know, Rumble's where most of my content is now because of free speech, because of my concern about legislation precisely like this, which now seems to be vindicated. Let me know in the comments if you agree, and for God's sake, join us on Rumble, is precisely because what was once a request is now becoming an order. All of this politeness, all of this kindness, all of this compassion, all this apparent care and concern for vulnerable people appears actually to be a way of crowbarring new legislation in which will serve the powerful. This is happening as big tech, both from the West like Google, Facebook and Amazon, and from the East like TikTok, are yet to make any comment. And now it's up to EU member countries to approve the law and allow the crisis mechanism to kick into gear. It gives us an interesting perspective, doesn't it, on the recent TikTok congressional hearings in the United States. Perhaps the real problem with TikTok is it's a company that's outside of the Anglophonic axis or the European tradition, and therefore potentially beyond the legislative power of bureaucracies like the EU and the United States and Northern American countries like Canada. It's perhaps the fact that TikTok exists outside of that remit that makes it a problem. If even Elon Musk, with his buccaneer attitude to rules and regulations, with his appetite for free speech, recognizes that what the EU is proposing is serious, then obviously what we're dealing with is a potentially existential threat. I would regard this legislation as the beginning of the kind of globalist, centralizing, authoritarian horror that we've been discussing mostly in terms of a somewhat distant threat. This is the legislation that brings a globalist mechanic even closer into fruition. It makes free speech harder, it makes opposing power harder, it makes new alliances more difficult. I don't see the opportunity to oppose it electorally anywhere. So Zuckerberg and Elon Musk, instead of fighting one another, should probably unite. But if neither of those men have the power to oppose these kind of institutions, then it's down to us individually and collectively to demand the free speech of those we disagree with. Only then do we have a chance of confronting this new racketeering bureaucratic mob. But that's just what I think. Let me know what you think in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, have a look at this one. It's from our Rumble show. You will love it. Have a look at this video. It's just like this one, maybe even better. I'm sure you'll love it. Remember, subscribe. Turn on the notification bell right now. I want to see them subscribers go right up. More important than any of that is that you please, if you can, stay free.